on Metasploitable, and let's finish that today. Okay, just excuse me for a moment. I'm getting a call from the office. Okay, so we were working on Metasploitable yesterday. Let's just keep going on with that. Yesterday's class recording. Okay, I'll share that link at the end of the session. Don't worry. Okay, good afternoon. Let me just switch on my Metasploitable system and then I'll go back to working on it. Okay, does anyone have any questions, anything that they might have doubts regarding from the previous session? Share the screen. Yeah, I'm doing that. Just a moment. Okay, Metasploitable is up and running. Let's just do a quick scan for this. And that's the IP. It's the same as yesterday. It does not really change what it's saying, that the host is saying down. Okay, let me check that. Okay, yeah, this might be 246, I think. Mm, okay, I think it did change. Oh yeah, this was definitely a different address. It was 252. I was remembering the incorrect IP. That. Okay, we have a basic scan for all the services that are running here. Now I'm just going to keep this tab open and I'm going to go to another one. Open Metasploit here. Okay, Metasploit is open. Now out of the services that we've seen, let's see what else we can do. So we have this Unreal IRCD. Let's see whether we can find something for this in Metasploit. So search Unreal IRCD. Okay, there is an exploit for this. Let's try and see if it works. Sometimes you might not be sure whether an exploit is going to work or not. Okay, but there's no problem in checking that. Now we don't know the version there because it was not able to tell us, Nmap was not able to detect that for us, but we can try running this exploit. Maybe it will work. If it works, then well and good for us. Because see, in this machine so far we've seen quite a few different exploits that exist, but that will not be the case in all systems that you see, because quite a few systems will have only a few ports open, only a few services running, and there you'll not be having a lot of choice. Okay, so our host 2.252, and if I try to run this, it's going to give me an error because I haven't selected the payload. So set payload. Let's just see what we get for the generic payload. Show options again. Actually, I think reverse shell is better. Set L host, so the IP of my machine, 15, and we can run this thing now, see if it works or not. And I think it is working. It's telling us that a command shell has been opened. Okay, so my root, again we have root access now through this method as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is no post exploitation to do on Metasploitable, so there's no files for us to look for, or there's nothing to search for as far as Metasploitable is concerned. Let's about this session, and let's go back to our list. So quite a few services running. Let's see what next to target. We can see that there is a MySQL server running. Okay, let's see. Let's try and target this one. See what happens. So again, I'm going to switch over to, okay, let's keep Metasploit open, switch over to another tab. And if you want to connect to a database server running MySQL, the command is mysql -u and the username. Now we always want to try and get root access to the database. So the username we'll use is root. -p means that we'll be using a password. -h is the host. Since I'm not connecting to a MySQL server running on my own device, I want to connect it to a remote device. So the host I need to specify where I need to connect. Now it's asking me for a password. I can try and leave it blank, see what that gives me. And we see that it's allowing us to log in to the MySQL server even without a password. So our password is blank in this case. Now, if I want, I can try to see the different databases here that are present in this SQL server. Show databases. And these are the few databases present. So 7 different databases in total. If you want to use any particular database, you say use and the database that you want. So if I say use MySQL and I say show tables. So these are the different tables. Let's say we see all the columns from user. So let's start from user. Okay, so this probably is not for us. This is just for the system. That's why it's not really giving us any good results. Okay, so maybe let's go back. Now this, in this case, there is no database that is actually containing any sort of sensitive data. But if you wanted, you could always try and look around. Okay, so now we've seen even more ways to get into this server. Now the thing is, there's actually quite a few different ways to hack into, what do you say, this metasploitable system, and we've seen lots of things. And there are other ways as well. I'm not going to cover everything because it's mostly just going to metasploit and looking for exploits as far as this machine is concerned. We'll not be relying so heavily on metasploit when we move on to other machines after this. Okay. So let's see one more thing here and then we'll stop working on this machine. So, okay, what shall we see? Okay, we see that there is a Java RMI server. Okay, let's take a look at this. Again, we need to go to Metasploit. Quite a few things. Okay, now it narrows it down to quite a bit. And let's try out this exploit. So use 3, show options. Now I need to set the IP, of course, and the target port. So let's just confirm what the target port is. So we have 1099 for Java RMI. And okay, let's close this all together. And it's set already by default. So let's run this. So we have a meter shell, and we now have root access again through this method as well. So this is where Metasploitable ends. And yesterday I mentioned another machine that we'll be using after this, which was basic pen testing. So did you all get that set up on your systems? Yes or no?
Hello, sir.
No?
Not yet, sir.
Okay, see, it's not. See, what I'm asking is, I yesterday mentioned a machine known as basic pen testing, the one that we'll be tackling after Metasploitable. So we are done with Metasploitable. Now we are going to move on to that. So you need to get that set up in a VM as well, and we are going to target that now.
Yes, sir.
So if you missed out on that part where I told you about it yesterday, I'll give you the link again for it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in the chat, I've given you the link. It's not a tool. It's a VM. It's a virtual machine. Okay, so just like Metasploitable, it's another VM.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is our next target now. Now, does anyone have any questions so far up to this point?
No, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to proceed now. And I'm going to be booting up my basic PT VM. I'm going to let that boot up, and then we'll start working on that. Okay, so my basic PT VM is up and running now. So again, when I'm targeting a machine, what is the first piece of information that I need?
IP address, sir.
IP address. Okay, correct. So for the IP address, what command can I run in order to find the IP address? I know that the machine was on the same network as my attacking machine.
If config.
See, if I run if config, I'll see the IP address of my device. That's fine. But I want to find the IP address of that device.
If header.
Okay. You have two options here. Since we know that we're on the same network, we can do two things. One is I can run net discover. There's a command known as net discover. I can run this and it's connected to this network which is on Ethernet 0. Excuse me, I need to specify the interface as Ethernet 0 and the network range to check, which is 10.0.2.1/16. Okay, I need to run this as sudo. Now it has given us four IPs in this range. Now this first IP, can anyone tell me what this first IP is for? In any network that you see, what is this first IP usually for?
Not idea.
No. The first IP is for your gateway or your router. So this 10.0.2.1, this is not going to be assigned to any computer or any other device in the network. This is going to belong to the gateway. So we can rule this out. The second IP, okay, now we don't know so far as to what this belongs to. But if you come to the MAC address column, you'll see that both of them share the same MAC address, the exact same MAC address. Okay, everything is the same. That means this is just another interface for the gateway itself and it is not a separate device because the MAC address is the same. Now we have two other devices that show up, 2.3 and 2.245. So we have narrowed it down to these two IPs. I'm going to stop the command because those other subnets don't have any devices on them. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run nmap and I'm going to try and run an operating system detection scan on both these IPs so that I get a better idea of what my target is. So 10.0.2.3 as well as 245, 3 comma 245. Requires root privileges, no problems. Sudo. Okay. Again for 2.3 we see that all ports are filtered and there is no OS information available as well. But for 2.245 we see that there is information that is available. It's telling us that the system is running Linux and it has ports open as well. Okay, just give me one moment and I'll resume sharing that. Okay, now there's actually a file on my system that I had to change when I was previously solving this. So I've unchanged that so we can start from the beginning again. Now we have our basic scan results, but it is always good to be a little more thorough. So I'm going to run a scan for all ports on that device. So 10.0.2.245, and we've specified that we wanted to check all ports, so that if there's any port that's working on an sorry, if there's any service that's working on an unusual port, we can find out about that as well. Okay, so it's giving us the same results as the earlier scan. So we know that there's only 3 ports open. Now what we can do is we can try to run a service version detection scan or a vulnerability scan as well. I'll specify that we only want 3 ports because there's no point wasting time on other ports if they are not open.
मैंने बचपन में पढ़ा x प्लस वाई होल स्क्वायर इज इक्वल टू एक्स स्क्वायर प्लस 2xy प्लस वाई स्क्वायर x माइनस वाई होल स्क्वायर इज इक्वल टू एक्स स्क्वायर माइनस 2xy प्लस वाई। अब मेरे समझ में नहीं आता कि करूं क्या इसका मैं मेरी जिंदगी।
Okay, so this is taking quite a bit of time. See. Okay, let's just open up another tab and run just a service version scan for these ports. Two, four, five. Okay, so we are getting these service version details for them. Okay, vulnerability scans usually can take a long time, so I'm just going to let this keep running and I'll continue working in the other tab. So it's telling us that these are the versions of the services that are running. Now for FTP, okay, we see there's Pro FTPD 1.3.3c, which is the version running here. Now for FTP, the first thing you need to try whenever you see an FTP server on a machine like this is to log in with, is to try an anonymous login. Okay, so that means logging in with anonymous as the username and anonymous as the password. So let's see, let's try to do that. For that, the command to connect to a server is ftp followed by the IP, which is in our case 10.0.2.245. Okay, and let's try to enter with an anonymous login. Okay, so anonymous logins are not going to work on this system. So there's nothing we can do currently on this FTP server. Let's just exit. So FTP servers are very polite. They also wave goodbye to you when you leave. Okay. Now FTP is anonymous login has, it has FTP, sorry, FTP has anonymous login disabled. SSH is just secure shell. It's a way of logging into a terminal remotely. But as of now, we don't have any credentials for it. We don't have any usernames or passwords to log into that system. So we can't do anything with SSH as of now either. And there's port 80 open as well. So port 80 means there is a web server and we are going to access it. But first we are going to see what we can do with Metaploit in this case. We have this FTP server running Pro FTPD 1.3.3. I'm just going to go to Metasploit. Okay, where is Metasploit running? Have we closed it already? Yeah, I think we've closed it. Okay, no worries. We can just turn it on again. And we can simply search for Pro FTPD, see whether it comes up with something. Okay, so it has a few results, and the version we are looking for is this one, actually 1.3.3c. Okay, so this one. So it's a backdoor command execution vulnerability, which is great for us. So we can try to use this. Use for show options again. Set the target. Port is 21. Okay, we didn't select any payloads, so it doesn't know. what to do in this case. So it has exploited the vulnerability, and let's see. Okay, we have root access onto the system, but this is the shortcut way, and just everything was automated, done by Metasploit in this case. That's not what we are going to do, however. So I'm going to come out of this, exit. We are going to look for the other method, which will teach us a few things about these kind of systems and how to exploit them. Now, as you know, there is a web server running. Okay, port 80 is active, port 80 is open. There is an HTTP server running. So we are going to try and target that now. Let's just go to the website and see what we find there. So it's on port 80, which is the default port for HTTP. So I just need the IP address here and I'll be able to access it. So it's telling me that it works. This is the default web page for this server. The web server is running, but no content has been added. Okay, so this page does not really give us any kind of information. Okay, so even if you view the page source, there will be nothing there. Now, on any website, okay, it's actually this is not even a website. So this is just the default page for the web server. We don't know how we can get to that page. Okay, so there is a software that I'll make use of now, which is known as DERB, or Directory Buster. So there is a GUI version of it as well, known as DERB Buster, or there is another one known as Go Buster. Okay, so you can use either of these. For now, I'm sticking with DERB. So now this comes pre-installed with your Kali or Parrot, and it's used to brute force directories or files on web servers or websites. So it's used to find out what paths are available on a web server. So the usage is quite simple, just derb and the URL. So HTTP in our case, and we just find the IP address, since that's all we know for now. Okay, so it has already found something for us, which is this directory known as secret. Okay, so let me try and access that. CRET secret. Let's see what happens here. Okay, it looks like we've hit some website. Let's wait for it to load. So something is opening, but this does not look properly formatted. Okay, we'll look into it. We'll look into that as well, why that's happening. And it's still loading, so that means we are having some issue accessing this server. Now, on the other hand, our derb has finished running, and everything that it has found has been within this secret directory. Okay, let's just continue and see what else we can find here. Let's try clicking on a link, see where it takes us. Okay, so if I'm clicking on that link, it's telling me that there's some error, there's some issue with accessing it. Let's try and go back, see what happens if we try other links. Again, we are running into the same issue. Can anyone tell me why that might be happening? If you just observe what's on the screen at this time, you'll find the answer. No? Look carefully, you might find something. When I switch from this page to, let's say, this one, what is changing that might be causing the issue? No? Okay. See, now the first thing that you'll notice is that even this page itself is not loading properly. When you go to a link, it does not remain the same. The IP address is now going to change to something known as VTC-SIG. So the links are all going to point to VTC-SIG. All of the links point to some server known as VTC-SIG. But there is no host name currently with that name. Sorry, there is no host currently with the name of VTC-SIG. So the solution for this is that we edit our hosts file. Are you familiar with the hosts file on a system?
No, sir.
No? Okay. See the host file, let me just open it up and show you. Then it'll be easier to explain that way. Now there is a file known as a host file in Windows, Linux, all kinds of systems. And what it does is it maps IP addresses to host names or domain names. Now the thing is, before you your DNS, before your system sends out a DNS request for a website, it was going to check this host file. So if the corresponding IP for the domain exists within the host file, it's going to use that value and it's not going to send out a DNS request. So what we can do is we can include this IP 2.245 and we can add the corresponding name which is VTC-SIG, which the website is looking for. So we have edited that file now. If I try to go back, let's see what difference I get. Now if you see, it's opening up properly.
Sir, excuse me, sir. Can you please tell
Yes,
again?
host file.
Yes, sir. What you have did?
Okay, okay. See, there is a file called the hosts file. Okay. Now what this file does is it maps IP addresses to domain names or host names.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now Are you aware of DNS, domain name
Domain
system?
name service, sir.
Yes. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, sir.
So,
Okay. So when you go to a website, when you enter an address in your browser, you are entering a domain name, you are entering a website name like google.com or facebook.com or youtube.com. You are just entering the domain name, but your system needs an IP address. So it's going to try and find that IP address. So it sends a DNS request asking for that IP address. But before it does that, it checks the host file. If it finds that domain in the host file itself, then it's not going to send a DNS request. If it finds the domain here, it's going to use the corresponding IP that you have specified and send a request to that IP. It's not going to send any kind of DNS request in that case. Now, in our case, we are being directed to a domain or a host with the name of VTC But of course, this is not an actual website. Okay, VTC is not an actual website. So even when your system is sending a DNS request, it's receiving no response for it. So what we do is we edit our host file and we add VTC there. We make an entry by the name of VTC along with the corresponding IP address of that system. So next time when my system tries to send a request to VTC it's going to look up the host file, it finds the IP, and it's going to use that value of the IP now. Okay,
Yeah, right, sir. Okay. Mm.
so that is why we needed to edit this host file and include this here. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to browse this website properly. Now, so coming back to this website itself, so it's my secret blog, just another WordPress site. So we have found out this website is running on WordPress, and let's see what we'll find here. There's just one post, it's just hello world. Okay, so there's not much to see on the website itself. Okay, it does not really have a lot of content. Whenever you look at a website, the first thing to check for is the robots.txt file. So this specifies what domains should be allowed or disallowed for different web crawlers that try to index all your websites. Like for example, Google or Yahoo, they their crawlers try to add every available web page to their index. So whenever you search for something, that is included in your results. Now, there might be some pages, there might be some parts of your website that you don't want to make publicly accessible, that you don't want people to see. You don't want these bots to be able to crawl those pages. So you can include them in a file known as robots.txt. When solving a CTF, or even if you're targeting an actual website, it could be helpful to look at the robots.txt file and see what pages have been disallowed. So that could give you some idea, that could give you some information about possible sensitive data. Now, in our case, it's not really finding that robots.txt file that does not exist for this website. Okay, so it's a website mainly for CTF purposes. So sometimes they don't include these kind of things in the websites they make. So what we can do now is, okay, let's just move past the robots.txt thing. Now this is a WordPress website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a tool known as WP scan. So this scans, this is a scanner for websites that are built using WordPress. So I need to provide the URL, which is in our case http, let's just say vdcsec and secret. And I also wanted to enumerate the users to try and find out how many users are user accounts are existing on the website. So hyphen e and u. So enumerate users. Let's see what we find. Okay, so it has found some information. Most of this is not really relevant from an attack perspective. The user has identified, okay, take a look at this. It has identified that there is an account by the name of admin. Okay, so this information could be useful. We now know that there is an account that exists by the name of admin itself. So if you look back at the results for the derb scan, you see there is something known as WP admin within the secret directory. Or if you just come to the website and click on login, you'll see that there is a login portal. Now I know that there is an account by the name of admin, so I can simply try to log in here. So, okay, I just tried a default password, the word pass, and it's not working. It's telling us that the password you entered for the username admin is incorrect. Okay, let's try the word password itself. Okay, let's try another default combination, which is admin admin. Okay, so this worked. We have now logged in as the admin account for this WordPress website, and this is the dashboard. We can manage the entire website from here. Okay, so due to there being a very weak password, the default password for the admin account, which is admin admin, that gave us the opportunity to log into it easily. So usually if you find that there is an account by the name of admin or administrator or root or something, it is always helpful to try default passwords like we've done in this case. And they might, because the person who has configured that might not have paid attention to the whole security aspect, and they might have just kept the default password as it is. Okay, so using that, we were able to log into the admin panel for this WordPress website. Okay, so we are going to continue with this in the next session.